We talked in an earlier video about remaining dry. Don't repeat yourself. ExpressionEngine offers a couple of ways to do this in a template. First, we talked about partials already a little bit. Today we're going to dig into embeds and variables a little bit further as well. So with that, let's build. One of the most common questions that comes up is, when do I use a partial? When do I use an embed? When do I use a variable? So let's talk through what each of these are, and let's actually talk about when we're going to use them. So the first is a template partial. A template partial is a slice of template code that you throw into your partials folder, and that is called in the regular parse order. It's really considered to be a part of the template that the partial is called in. So your typical channel entries loops and other loops that may be happening there are all called in at the same time with that partial. A template variable is a static piece of code that gets called very far into the template parsing process. So after channel entry loops are parsed, after most everything is done, those variables get called in. So it's really good for static data, something that's not going to change or not going to change that often. Template embeds are actually other templates that get called and parsed by themselves. So for example, if I have a channel entries loop that needs to have another channel entries loop inside of it, which is very dangerous, by the way, then I need to create my template loop inside of an embeddable template so that it can be called as part of the template process. And that way it's parsed completely separate and pulled in separately. So when should I use each? Partials are great if you want something that doesn't need, or that is going to be repeated a few times, but just pulls in the data for what's coming in. Embeds are great for repeatable data that may need other variables or may need other content that needs to come in over and over and over and over again. And variables are great for highly static content, something that's going to stay the same for a very long time. So let's actually start there. I've got our site up and running. We've got our "Have you seen this cat" post. Let's actually create a template variable. So here we are in our footer of our site, and let's actually look down at Facebook here. So we have in our site, let's take a look. We've got these social links. Right now they are all just linked with a hash sign. So let's actually take a look and create our template variable. So you can do this in two ways. One, if you go to your templates section of your back end of your site, and you go to template variables, there you can see I've already created this Facebook one. But you can create one here and it'll write the code automatically. So you can see I've got our content in there. This Facebook link is not going to change for a very long time, so I'm going to save that. And so what that actually did in the code, and the other way that you can do this, is in your system user templates site folder, you can create a folder called _variables, just like EE did for us here. And all it does is create an HTML file with the variable name and the exact code that we called in here. So we can see that our Facebook link is set up. Let's take a look at our footer. And this is our Facebook code right here. I'm going to mark this off for us so we can see it nice and easy. Facebook. And Facebook. Can't spell. All right, and here is our A tag. So since we have our URL right there, all I get to type is Facebook, because that's the name of our variable, and that will get called at the very end. So now when I go back to our page and refresh that, and I hover over my link here, you can see it's now linking to the actual Facebook site that we called. So I'm going to close that out. Now let's take a look at partials and embeds. So let's take a look at partials. we can take a look at the blog entry here. I've actually gone ahead and added a couple fields here that you can see. I'm going to move my face so that you can see down here SEO title, SEO description, and SEO no robots. Just some things we want to do to better be able to manage the SEO data that we're pulling in. So I want to call those in a piece of code that I've got. Let me shut these right here. So that will basically just go through and add our open graph tags, add our Twitter tags, and add a conditional to say, I don't want this content to be found by search engines. And all it's doing is checking against the fields and then defaulting to the fields that already exist. Yep, subtitle. Okay, cool. So what we want to do here is I want to actually add this into a partial because this is code that is not going to be static. It's going to need to be called in the channel entries so that we can do that. So let's do that now. In our partials folder, I'm going to create a new file and let's call it seo.html. And I'm just going to pull over the code that I've already created there. Perfect. Now that has only created the partial. It doesn't actually add it to our group. So let's go back to our main template here. Remind ourselves, oh yeah, that's right. So we created a layout variable for the title right here. What we're going to do now is, since this all goes in the header, we're going to create another layout variable, and we're going to call it layout head extra. Perfect. And then let's go to our blog page in blog entry. And here we go. We have our layout set here. So we're going to do layout set name equals head extra. And then we'll grab our closing tag. And then all we're going to do, same way we did with the variable, is just call SEO. So now if I go back in, I'm going to go to my content. I'm going to change SEO title to, let's see, have you seen this cat? And save. Great. And let's make sure we've got our templates saved. We've got our layout set. Okay. So now when I go back in here, nothing exciting changed on the front end. Let's actually inspect it. Elements, close that. We'll go into our head. And here we are. We have all of our SEO content now getting called in here. So now if we needed to do some sort of query or something that we needed to continually set in the content, this would be where we would use an embed. So let's take a look at that now. Now, one of the reasons embeds are so robust is that all of the variables that we need to call, we can assign. All of the channel entry loops we need, we can actually run in the template because it's a totally separate template that stands by itself that we just say, hey, parse this and chuck it inside here. So what we're going to do is start by creating a new folder here. We're going to call it embeds.group. All right, and we're going to create one. You know, we have, let's take a look at our site real quick. On our homepage, we have this blog card that we call multiple times over and over and over again. We're actually going to turn that into an embed. So we can make it a little bit more dry. We can say we're just going to do it once, and we're going to use embed variables in order to get it in there. So let's create a new file, and we'll call it blogcard.html. And I'm going to go to my default group, and let's just grab one of those cards. That is in right here. Yep. Cool. All right. And what we'll do is we'll get rid of it here. All right. So within this, I'm actually going to, yeah, we can do that still. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to first embed the card. Embed equals Same way as we do a layout group, we need to actually call the whole template name. So it's embeds / blog card. So now if we take a look at our front page, we see a whole bunch of content that hasn't been parsed. That's because inside of our embedded template, we haven't told it how to parse it yet. So let's take a look at the different tags we have called here. So we have featured image. Let's actually move that into an embed variable. So, and I'm going to make this multi-line just so it's a little bit easier to read. So we're going to call featured image equals featured image. And so what I've done here is I've assigned this embed variable featured image equals what's being called in the channel entries tag here. So in our blog card now, under featured image, I just need to do embed : featured image in order to call that specific variable. And let's take a look. And we see we've got our URL that is coming in. So we may actually need to adjust that just a little bit because it comes in as a variable, as a string. So let's get rid of that and let's call our string here. Let's take one more look. And we have our blog back. All right, so let's assign our other variables here. So what we can do in a case where we need something that we would need to loop through is actually loop through it when we're calling the embed template. So we have our categories here. So let's assign a new variable, call it categories equals, and we're going to grab this entire loop here. Oops, that's already one line. And let's make these single quotes just by way of making it easier for us to see what's happening there. So all we've done is pulled out that conditional and that categories loops that will create the link right here. And then here, instead of actually running the loop, we're going to do embed categories. Let's take a look. And we've got our embeds back. All right, let's do the same thing with the title here. So we're going to make this embed title, and then we'll assign that over here. Title equals title. And here we go. So let's make blog content, and we're going to assign that here, blog content equals, and we're going to make it the same attribute safe with the character limit there that gets called in. What other variables do we need? We need our author. So author equals author. And then we'll call embed author here. And our entry date. So let's create two variables. We're going to say embed time date that we'll use in our time tag. What do we call that? Time _ date equals, yep, perfect. And then we'll create a pretty date equals this one. And let's pretty date equals this. All right, so let's take a look at our cards. Oh, our blog content. What's happening there? Oh, let's change that to embed blog content. And there we go. So now our template code, we've abstracted that whole card and we've changed it into one simple call. And we've set all those variables so we're able to do it. We don't have to worry about, formatting all over the place, that kind of thing. We can take this one this one little block of code and reproduce this everywhere that we're using this card. So it's much nicer on the UI, much nicer wherever we're calling that. If we wanted to, inside of that, we could actually say, we could change this to author ID and actually call in the member's name, the member's full name, maybe with an email address, so we can get a full author bio there. But this is the kind of thing that you can do with embeds. Lots to do here, lots that you can do inside your templates to make it nice and dry and make it very user-friendly. So have fun, experiment, and we'll see you in the next one.